Hello everyone, how are you today? Welcome back to our third episode of Science or Fiction. Have you ever wondered if we only use 10% of our brain? We are gonna be exploring this neuromyth today. Well, what does it mean that we use 10%? Is it that we only need that volume and the rest is worthless? Even if we were to lose a very small portion in an accident, we can suffer impairments in cognition, perception, movement. For example, there's a famous case of a man, Phineas Gage, who had an accident while he was at work, and a metal rod went through his face and out from the top of his head. He survived with a frontal lobe lesion, and the brain stem, which controls breathing, heartbeat, and other essential systems, was spared. Phineas could move and talk normally, but his personality was severely affected just after the accident. He could not plan correctly and would behave inappropriately. For example, he would spew profanities to clients when working. So some brain areas which we don't even think about may turn out to be necessary to preserve our personality or behave appropriately around others. Another example, if we lose this small structure called the hippocampus, we no longer are able to form new memories. A patient called Clive Waring lost both hippocampi due to a virus infection which affected his brain, and only has a short-term memory of 7 to 30 seconds. When his wife leaves the room where he is, after he returns, Clive is convinced that it's the first time in years they've seen each other. This is a page from his diary where he writes, "Now I am perfectly awake for the first time." Proceeds to cross out "first time" and rewrites, "Now I am perfectly awake for the first time," over and over. Sometimes we don't think that some brain functions even exist. We take them for granted, but they still may be the most necessary and complex. Consider how we can catch a ball in the air that is going super fast towards you. We don't even have to think about it, but it's a very complex process. We are able to remember hundreds upon hundreds of words which we use to talk. We can recognize objects, which is super complicated too. We can recognize objects when we don't see the whole thing, when they are made of different materials, or when they are at different scales or angles. Also, even if they are drawn. Not only that, but we know their name, what they are for, and if we own them, and tons of other info. We are able to remember what we did yesterday and vacations from years ago, and we don't have to repeat these events to remember they happened. Obviously, we only live once. So, pretty incredible, huh? Even really small parts of the brain are indispensable to allow us to function and be ourselves. So things we believe are super simple because we do them automatically in reality are super complex if we stop to think about what the brain has to accomplish without us being conscious of it. Have you ever wondered how we wake up and how we go to sleep? There are several brain systems which control these rhythms. It's evident that we use much more than 10% of our brain at the same time. If we observe the brain with functional magnetic resonance imaging, even when we are doing nothing, there's activity all over, and this is called the resting state. If there was a neuron that never fired, it would lose its connections with other neurons due to lack of activity and end up dying. When we see these brain images, the red areas show which zones are being used more actively. The neurons here are firing faster than before. But if all neurons were to send signals faster and at the same time, we would have tons of problems, because the brain is a balanced net in the way that neurons are connected and communicate. For neurons to communicate, we need specific groups that synchronize at certain speeds. There are inhibitory and excitatory neurons, so the net can manipulate with a lot of precision. But if all neural groups were to send their messages at the same speed, it would be like you trying to understand everyone in a room full of people, and all of them were screaming. We wouldn't understand anything. If all the neurons behave the same, we cannot have synchronization of the neurons that we really need for an activity. When there's too much uncontrollable activity, we have epileptic seizures. Not only that, but neurons which very rarely send signals are very important for net integration and to form long-lasting connections. Communication at low speeds is thus essential so our brains work correctly. Lastly, when neurons fire super fast during a long time, they die. When neurons send a signal, calcium gets in, and if a lot accumulates, it becomes toxic and the cell dies. So that we only use 10% of our brains is a myth. We use all its functionality. If you want to get better at something, like playing an instrument, practice will strengthen the specific connections you use when doing this activity, making them more precise and efficient. And this is how learning works. And that is all for today. I hope you liked the episode, and if you did, give a like and subscribe for more science videos every week. See you!